With that, our next one is all about AI Unveiled, and this is where we're unlocking a spectrum of possibilities for gaming. We've got such an interesting set of speakers lined up. They're all set, and I'm sure our audience is also eager to deep dive into our next discussion. All right, so with that, let me go ahead and first up invite our session moderator, the one who's spearheading this phenomenal session. We have with us Swapan Rajdev, who's the co-founder of Haptik. Thank you, Swapan, for joining us. With that, let me go ahead and also invite your panelists on stage. We have with us Amit Sharma, Chief Technology Officer, Dream Sports Group. I'd like to also invite Kshitij Jayakrishnan, Vice President, Elevation Capital. We also have with us Manohar Hotchandani, Director of Business Development, AI and RL Partnerships, Meta India. May I also please invite Pablo Tachil, Regional Vice President, Salesforce, and Vinay Kumar, Director, AI, Azure and Search Partnership, Microsoft. Ladies and gentlemen, we are unlocking a spectrum of possibilities for gaming with AI. Can we also have a beautiful round of applause? Because let's also unlock that energy in all of you and that curiosity in all of you. And with that, let's welcome our panelists, and let me quickly hand it over to Swapan. Over to you then.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. And, I know we're about that time for lunch, but, we have a very exciting panel. Ranging from literally all players on the ecosystem. So I think we're going to have a very engaging conversation. So without further ado, let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Swapan Rajdev. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Haptik. We're India's largest conversational AI platform, building conversational agents for pre-sales, post-sales, and for all sorts of businesses. Having said that, I'd love the panel to introduce themselves. And, while introducing, would love to hear your thoughts on how you are seeing AI being used in gaming and how you're seeing AI revolutionize gaming, right? So from all your perspectives, different perspectives, would love some comments to start off the panel. So Amit, starting with you.
So hi, I'm Amit Sharma. I'm the CTO of Dream Sports. So our flagship product is Dream 11, and we also have a gaming studio called Dream Game Studios. We have a OTT platform called FanCode, and we have a sports travel arm called as Dream Set Go. So I think AI, it's like a misnomer of sorts for me, that when I hear about AI, like at Dream 11. So Dream 11 is like not a typical game per se. It's more of a RMG fantasy sports platform. And people believe that, okay, what's the tech behind a sports platform? And it's not a game. Actually, it's a lot of work goes behind the scenes for us. So to build a fantasy sports platform, you need a very high scalable system. The nature of the platform is such that a lot of users, like for example, last IPL, the peak of around 15 million concurrent users came to our platform. So over the last few years, we've been building a lot of AI ML applications to be able to give them the user experience that they all deserve. So for example, it starts right at the outset, it starts with demand forecasting for us. So how many users do we actually expect to come to our platform? How do we predict that? And to make sure when they're there, to have the right supply for them of the contests that they want to participate in. So it starts with that. Once they're on the platform, how do we make sure that all the users are playing by the rules that they're supposed to be? There's no fraud whatsoever. There's no fair play violation. We have ML models behind the scenes that work to make sure that that doesn't happen. Personalization is table stakes these days in consumer apps, so a lot of work goes behind personalization. And then, so these are typical applications where we've been using AI and ML, and then lately, like more towards like decision making at the org level, where we have invested in causal inferencing and the next gen techniques to solve some of our algorithms that we have, like reinforcement learning. But when it comes to in today's day and age, I think when people are talking about AI, they kind of mean AGI, like artificial general, with the LLM balls and all stuff, right? So those also, I think they're very much in infancy right now for us. So what we're doing in Dream 11 and Dream Sports is we're building the muscle right now to actually understand the technology and figure out what are all the use cases. So it can't be a force fit, but I've heard other panels, and a lot of people know that it has unlocked capabilities that were not there originally. So in a game like ours, which is a fantasy sports platform, as I said, there's a lot of strategizing. It's a game of skill. So there's a lot of strategizing that is needed to actually build a team, for example. Now, to do that, people rely a lot of insights. They do a lot of research and statistics. There are not a lot of good sources. So can we, for example, build a very powerful stats engine using the LLM as a base to give them the power that is probably not possible today? So that's like one area that we are investing in and we're thinking. In our portfolio companies, like we'll have a session on Dream Game Studios later in the day. But so we have a AAA mobile game called Dream Cricket that we launched last year, doing very well, some few million users already. So in there, like use cases like, okay, in real time, the challenge is to create that the commentary, right, as the users are playing. So there are a lot of use cases that are revolving around that. So we are working with like the likes of Llama or like all the models out there, I think, and figure out like which model solves which use case for us within our ecosystem. And to do that, in parallel, we're building, as I said, the culture of curiosity to understand this technology and identify the use case. That's what we're building on right now. And once we build that, we believe a lot of use cases will follow.
Perfect. Wow. Those, commentary for cricket is a very interesting use case. But no, I absolutely agree, right? I think one is building the team, and the other, actually, as you said, it's not about force-fitting AI, right? You have to find your use case, find where it truly has an impact. So, Kshitij, if you can kind of introduce yourself in a few words from an investment perspective of what use cases you're seeing having some impact here.
Yeah, definitely. So, introducing myself, I'm VP of investments in gaming at Elevation Capital. So, co-lead our practice in terms of early stage investments in gaming. So, typically we do seed, Series A investments. Work with a couple of studios that we funded over the last few years across casual games as well as mid-core games. The largest investment we have made in gaming has been Play Simple. And yeah, to talk a little bit about how we see AI, I think it's a very different perspective from an investor lens because almost I see it as a platform shift because very similar to how consumer internet or mobile made games more mass market from early 2010s or so, AI is also becoming a platform shift for games. So almost there's so much potential for any and every developer to build a game very quickly. So the tedious parts of game development will get automated. Any game experience can be a lot more immersive. For example, you can have intelligent non-playing characters in your game, which just widens the narrative choices that any gamer has, right? So you don't need to, as a developer, you don't need to pre-program any decision trees, but just have a wider narrative choice in your game. So almost because of AI, there is a very unique sort of platform shift which makes games more immersive, game development times much smaller, enabling anyone to become a developer and create very unique, high-quality experiences.
Perfect. No, that's super interesting. And, as you said, some experiences will change and the platform will shift. So, Manohar, on to you to kind of give us, a more, model building meta and other experience kind of perspective. So
I agree with the panelist here. This is Manohar Hotchandani. I lead the ecosystem build partnerships for AI, reality labs and gaming at Meta in addition to payments. I think one underlying layer that I want to say to what was mentioned earlier, AI is not new. In Meta, AI has been used for decades now, almost more than a decade. And I don't know if most of you use our products, but if you take Facebook, Instagram, Messenger or WhatsApp, in Facebook, for instance, your feed has been using AI for 10 years to provide you content, to provide you with right level of outcome and not be fed with things that you don't want to see. But what has changed over the last 1 year is the large language models, and generative AI has accelerated that. And how does it accelerate that? Because now a lot of that is coming out of the box for you to start fine-tuning. You don't need to build those models with billions of tokens, which is where some of the founder companies are doing that, like Meta is doing with Llama, for you to now start using that. So I think I'm going to leave you with 4 suggestions before telling you what changes in Explore. I think that is a brilliant point made by Amit. Explore. Because as you explore, you learn more. I'll leave you with 3 things as gaming companies, if there are any in this room, I'm sure there are lots, is 1, look at if you're building a game difficulty level. I'm leaving you with very small things. Some AI companies, some AI is already using that to premise and saying what level should this user drop to or what level should it go up to in terms of that. Second, content. Either fitting an image. There's a VC funded company that recently used images as cultural moments and drew millions of dollars on instant games platform on Facebook, globally becoming a hit. There is Niantic, which is using in Peridot, the first AR game, a LLM model that basically gives you new scenarios rather than limited scenarios. I can keep going on and on. So pure content to verification to now decision making and inference, AI is picking up areas in all of them. One interesting element that will change as you go along is with SLMs, which is small language models. On the edge, a lot of that will also now start to migrate to the front end. Those are themes that we are seeing for you broadly to start experimenting and exploring with. And I'll stop there and give it to my next panelist.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great, great to have some great, actionable points. So, Pablo, on to you if you can, introduce yourself and give your perspective.
Sure. So my name is Pablo with Salesforce. As a tech company, like what my fellow panelists said, AI is not new in tech world, right? I mean, we've all been using AI for the last several years. Salesforce, as you're aware, is the global leader in customer engagement experience platform. And essentially what that means is over the last 25 years, we've mastered the art of identifying users who are unknown to you today. How do you actually get them on board? How do you keep them invested, keep them interested, and make sure you have the retention going? I think that's really where we're plugging in. And I think everybody talks about where AI needs to be used. What are the practical use cases of using AI? And that's really where we want to apply that, right? So we've been doing that not just in the gaming industry, but across many industries. And I think there's a lot of cross-industry experience that comes into play. Like, for example, how do you make sure that you have a customer experience across a hospitality sector, across a gaming sector? There are a lot of things that we've learned from, inter segments and kind of applied to it. And I think what's also very important is, as gaming companies, there's a lot of investments going into the actual game per se, which I think is obviously the bread and butter of what you're looking at. But what's also important is to make sure that there is, a sufficient amount of focus also given in making sure that players have great experience, to make sure that at the end of the day, the player lifetime value is actually going up. So I think that's going to be very important. Leave it.
Got it. Perfect. And Vinay, from your perspective.
Yeah, hi. My name is Vinay Kumar. I am part of the corporate business development team at Microsoft. So I'm going to set the context a little bit. I think people have already talked about it, but the association of AI and gaming goes a long ways, So I think even if you think back and look at some of the very, very early games like Pac-Man. So Pac-Man also used AI, for the movement of its ghosts, those 4 ghosts, and that was sort of a rule-based programming that they did. And there was very, very early manifestations of AI in games. And over time, gamers have used AI in a variety of ways. I think Amit talked about demand forecasting and things like that. So a lot of use cases have been in analytics, also in creating these NPCs, non-player characters. But with the Gen AI, we see a huge shift happening. And I think somebody mentioned here platform shift. So with Gen AI, we see this as a huge platform. It's not just an ingredient, it's a new platform on which games would be developed. And if you look at the last 30, 40 years, there has been like 3, 4 big platform shifts. PC was one, internet was another one, mobile was the third one. And this is the 4th one where we see the impact will be for decades to come. And as far as gaming industry is concerned, it's directly getting impacted because of the generative capabilities of these large language models. And although the whole ChatGPT fever started with text generation, but soon we have seen that it has extended itself to image and videos and all kinds of things. And this is only, if you think about it, it's only year 2. So this whole ChatGPT model came on horizon by the end of November. I think November 2022 was when it was launched. And 2023 was 1 full year of AI. Now we are in the 2nd year. And we are already seeing massive impact that it could create for the gaming industry. One is clearly in creating new games. So the creation of, let's say, new environments, 3D environments, all that would be, I think, over time, on the next 5 years or so, would be very simplistically done with the use of these large language models. And then over time, I think this can go into a much deeper depth. I think the models are getting much advanced. They are becoming more they're getting reasoning capabilities. They're becoming more analytical. So the game development will get, I would say, dramatically simplified. Or at least you'll have a lot of tools available at your disposal, which will make your life easier as a game developer. So the whole life cycle of building games, taking it to market, all that would get sort of crunched because of this. And then also there is a huge impact on the business side. Business model, if you look at the business model of gaming industry, a lot of money is getting spent in just production. And the revenue maybe doesn't justify sometimes, the cost of production. But the cost of production will come down with these tools. So the whole industry is likely to get more profitable and more attractive, for new gamers.
I wanted to add something to this. I think all of us have maintained the same theme that AI is not new, but is new. It can get a little confusing for people. So I think of it traditionally, I think it's all about nomenclature. So traditionally, most of the AI ML applications were very specific, trained specifically to solve one problem, whether it is a Pac-Man use case or anything else. I think we don't want to underplay the Gen AI space also. So the way the LLMs, in my mind, it's like getting it commoditized, and the people that should be scared the most are the AI developers themselves, who have the expertise, who take like 6 months to actually take the data and train the model and create something specific. Now what ends up happening is all of these LLMs that are constantly trained on so much data have a lot of horizontal capabilities. And then because of that, a lot of the upfront work is already done. And that's why it powers the productivity from different lens. Whether it is productivity of how you use it in your day-to-day work, or whether it is productivity in terms of creating new things much faster than you used to earlier, or productivity in terms of scale. So I'll give you an example of one application that we launched last year on Dream11 to assist users in creating teams. So it's called an AI coach. So the way it used to work earlier is that for a few matches, some people used to, on the team operations, folks used to go and research, read a lot of articles, and create insights and say, okay, this is kind of an insight that we probably need. And then convert that into like a recommendation of sort. And then work within tool or an agency to convert that into like an audio file of sort that could talk to the users in an audio clip and give them recommendation. And you guys should all try it on the Dream11 app, the feature. So when the user comes to create a team and you play that clip, it tells you, this is the match, this is what is going to happen, this is what happened previously, this is my recommendation, things like that. Now, to do something like this for a singular match used to take us days. Now, we changed the way we worked, and so we host like around 10 to 15,000 matches in a year. So the way we work now is we use LLMs and we use the same technology to scour through the internet to get all the data about that particular match. So that process is reduced to a few hours now. Then obviously there is a little bit of human loop to get the insights right, which hopefully will go away in the future. And once we get that insights right, then we have models that instantly convert it into all kind of audio text languages based on the user persona, and we can personalize it. So something that used to take us days, a feature that we never could have thought of scaling to all our users in all the languages for all our matches. So these capabilities get unlocked because of what we call now AI, which is like, as I said, it's artificial general intelligence and the capabilities. So that tectonic shift in how we are able to do things that we couldn't is what differentiates the traditional AI to all the AI discussions that you will hear from now on going forward. And it's only going to get more powerful from here.
I'll just add one point to that, which is earlier we used to do everything on structured data. Now the machine can actually understand and reason with unstructured data as well that you have. The pre-trained models are so large and have scraped the internet almost on every public site that 15 trillion, 16 trillion tokens are used on that. So the pre-trained data is available to Amit's point, but fine-tuning now takes a very limited time for you to actually throw out a model or a vertical solution in days, which used to take months earlier. So I think that's a good point that Amit clarified for everybody. Thank you.
No, that's perfect. See, I think I'm exactly right. I think what I'm getting out as a theme, as you said, AI is not new. I think game developers usually have been at the forefront of technology and been using AI for a while. But now with the new LLMs and Gen AI, the mode of working is going to be significantly different, right? So I think what one takeaway I'm getting out is game development, and as I think a bunch of people mentioned, is getting easier, which I think is a promising thing. Previous panelists also said a lot of new games are going to come out. So I think, that's very interesting for everyone here in development to kind of really think, can we get into game development or can we change our process around it, right? So I think that's a very good takeaway. So, let me kind of also try to delve a little deeper into it and, open for all the panelists. So we've now gotten that game development is going to change. It's probably going to become cheaper, hopefully. What about the gaming experiences, right? Are we going to see changes in that? Are you seeing any promises or any, early signals of difference in the gaming experience? Today I think we have mobile apps, web apps, TVs, AAAs, RPGs, fantasies. What do you imagine the future of gaming to look like, given what we're seeing in technology today? And anyone is open to take it. Otherwise, I'll call someone out.
I can take it first. If you want, I'll give you more scenarios which were not possible earlier. Earlier, we used to use AI and Gen AI for processes. Now it's basically to create scenarios for customers or engagement to happen. There's a company called Latitude Gaming that came up with a game called AI Dragon. Go experience it. It's basically you start a conversation and it'll still build a story on it. Now that means you're engaging a user to create a story and continue with that story as it goes along because the LLM is feeding it. So it's opening up new scenarios where earlier you used to write the script, you used to write the scenarios, you used to write the levels. Now actually you can use LLMs to go to the next level and start to experience it. So I'm going to leave you with one point, which is it actually evolves for you to create scenarios on the fly where the user is creating the engagement rather than you creating the engagement. So that's one point that I'll leave you.
Very interesting, yeah.
Just want to add to what he was saying. Right now, it's more about making sure that when we say AI, it's actually able to think beyond the limits that we've actually set, right? You were talking about saying we are actually getting to unstructured data, but we're also trying to see if AI can get the right emotions, the right thing out of. If you think about it, right? We're actually moving from a phase where we are actually asking the AI a question and we're expecting an answer that's based on either responses in the past or structured data or certain rules that we've actually set. But right now what we're expecting is for that whole engine to operate in a way that we could think and provide answers, provide changes, provide recommendations, or even provide suggestions in a way that we would respond as a human. So to what he was talking about on the latitude, that's exactly what is happening, because it's trying to understand that if I'm a user, I'm a player, I'm a gamer, I'm essentially saying a story that the bot is able to think and then produce results that can actually, resonate with what I'm looking at. And that's really where we're going. And it's not just with the actual game tech, but even in terms of how we want to provide the customer experience to the users. Like, for example, in between the game, you're actually trying to have a question to your support agent. You want to make sure that the support bot is actually speaking as a human and not just as a bot with, ready answers that's already been pre-fed or based on certain suggestions. And I think moving towards agentic AI and not just generative AI is the path that we're actually looking at. So,
yeah, no, go ahead.
I can also add, actually read an interesting articulation online in an article, which was just that game developers face this trade-off between creativity and efficiency almost, right? So if you want to build a cost-effective game, at some level you need to give up on some elements of creativity. But what AI will change, at least generative AI will change, is that because the resources taken to build the game and the time taken to build the game are lower now, your creativity can be unleashed. So it goes beyond this trade-off and almost helps you take charge of the game development, right, fully. So this could involve like building different game mechanics which have AI, as Manohar was saying, right, incorporates AI into the game mechanic itself. Or it could have very like immersive experiences with intelligent agents in the game. So yeah,
So I think one of the most complex problems to solve in gaming is progression, right? And so when you start a game, you want it to be very easy, but if it gets too easy, then the user gets bored.
Right.
If it gets too complex, too hard, too early, then there's again user will churn and not play. And like a lot of time has been spent historically to figure out the right mix at the right time, how to make every element, and it's not an easy problem to solve. I think now with the capabilities, I think this is a huge under the hood like platform level optimization I see or a capability that the games will be able to ramp up the progression level for every single user individually. I think that is the trend that I think will catch on very fast. And I think another thing is a multimodal approach to gaming. I think with this voice and the other controlling, I think right now a lot of our games are very focused on like not getting to the AR, VR. So it's a very specific way of actually interacting with whichever gaming platform you're doing today. But now with everything with so many models becoming multimodal and trying to give you easy access to actually make and build on top of it, that could actually create a lot of different kind of use cases and interactions that I believe that probably game developers weren't thinking too much. I mean, they would always aspire to do, but I think because the capabilities not being there, they wouldn't. But now I think we'll see a lot of things coming out in that domain as well.
Just to add, I think everything's been already said. So engagement will become better. Games will become more personalized. On the multimodal front, I believe that it'll increase the TAM because more people would be able to, like my son plays with somebody, sitting in Denmark and all that, but they only communicate in English right now. So over time, you would be able to communicate in any language with anybody while playing a game. So this will also bring a lot more people into the
Right.
ecosystem.
Very interesting.
Just
so you're
want
saying,
to add one point, right? I think outside of tech, especially with one of the earlier panels today that was talking about betting and essentially anything to do with money transactions, my sense is there's going to be enough regulations to make sure that gaming companies don't have a predatory behavior, which means we want to make sure that while people are putting in money to play a particular game, we want to make sure that there is some way that we can actually deter people from going beyond a point. And I think AI is going to play a massive role here because like one of the things that we do within our organization is to make sure that we do not have the biases or the predatory behavior going into a particular recommendation, right? I think that's going to be a very, very critical thing. And I have a sense that that's going to be a part of the regulations very soon.
interesting. So, I'm hearing multiple different takes, but very interesting takes. So one, obviously, the whole experience is going to change. It's going to get a lot more engaging for that matter. And, as Amit said, a lot more personalized. I think that is a very powerful feature because today, while there is logic coded in, with agents who can reason and with the context capabilities of LLMs, I think a lot of the gameplay will be changing on the fly, which will just make it a lot more personalized, a lot more engaging. I think multimodal was a very interesting experience. I think there's auto translation to kind of get over language barriers. So, people can communicate in their own language and get translated in real time. And obviously, as you're saying, regulation, safety, all of those start changing significantly. So, very interesting takeaways. Moving on from this, right? And I think getting a little bit into the real world, I think these use cases are fantastic, obviously will help. But I don't know if there's a question on a lot of people's mind, but on my mind, these are great, and we're saying it will make it cheaper, but LLMs are not cheap yet, right? They are expensive. So, are you seeing a lot of these things already happening? Is this we thinking the future, or how do you imagine this coming into reality, right? Is it today, or is it a few months away? Is it a few years away? I don't know if anyone wants to take a crack at that.
I'll take a crack a different way. To democratize this, we've open sourced the model, so it's free for you.
Yeah, but hosting it is not cheap.
You can use the way that you want. So there are two costs to anything. One cost is the upfront cost that you pay, and the second cost is the infrastructure cost. I think the cost that we are trying to say here is as it starts, and I'll give you an example of this. I don't know if there are any people who use machine learning. I know there are a few on the stage. But anyone who used PyTorch, which is what we did in 2018, changed the way machine learning frameworks were used earlier. And so open sourcing actually helps to democratize. I'm not saying open source is just good. Closed and open source both are good to democratize the system. We've started that engagement, and we are seeing not just that. we've actually open sourced the model that you can build on top of our model. So you take the input from our model and build something on top of the model. I'll give you an example. Sarvam, which is not right now in gaming, but I'm sure somebody else would be, took this and now is using that as voice models in Indian languages, using base as llama on it. So you can start to explore on what you can do and start to build on top of that maybe your model that you can start to make it agentic, to his point, that can drive certain behaviors. So I think that's one point that I want to leave. And I think second point, explore. Because I think until you don't explore, you will not know what's good in your community that you want to play in. And I think I'll give it to Kshitij, because I think some of the companies that they funded have actually seen serious growth in cultural movements by clicking just a photograph, which can become $1 million activities on different platforms and can grow that kind of revenue in very short period of time within a quarter. So you want to probably talk about that, Kshitij?
Yeah. So yeah, we invest in a company called Flex Labs who builds game on Facebook games. So it's just very simple, right? Like very contextual cultural moments, like any festival or event that's happening. You can almost use your image as like in the background of, I don't know, something like, in the background of Holi or Shivratri or something like that. And it's almost a very simple game, just a jigsaw game, but people come in just to see their photographs in that environment and then use it to publicize as their display pictures or their statuses on any social platform, right? So just a very simple sort of game like that, which leverages AI, to Manohar's point, grew very quickly to almost millions of users and significant revenue. So that's a very real here and now use case that people are using AI to build quick games.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, Manohar, to your point, right? I think open source, so PyTorch, by the way, we are very big users of PyTorch, and it has really changed the game on that. And I agree, right? With open source models, the big part is, number one, obviously the training costs are gone, but then there's a lot of exploration that can be done on top of it. So you can use them, fine tune them yourself, and kind of do a lot of that. And, that just helps to kind of, enhance the whole thing.
I think it's the same trend, right? It's very new.
Yeah.
I think even like everyone is trying to figure out the business model. Everyone is trying to figure out the sweet spot. I think going forward, three things are going to happen. One, the cost of training itself for the likes of Meta and Google and Microsoft will go down because they'll figure out more efficient ways of actually training the same information. In parallel, they'll figure out the right economics in terms of what is the right pricing structure. And the same trend, I think the initial exploration, playing, creating development games up to a few, maybe 1 million users or so, hopefully will get free. And so that the people can explore and start doing a lot of things. And once they scale, that's where then the revenue starts flowing in. That's a model that I think the cloud providers especially use a lot. So I'm thinking that similar trends would emerge in this space as well.
Absolutely. And I think if you see the trend, the cost of inference, which is a per API call, over the last 2 years has actually reduced by 70%, right? Massive, massive effort is going into making these cheaper. So, my personal belief though, just to share, is I think the cost is definitely going to go down. And as everyone is saying, start exploring today, get your use cases ready so that when the cost is cheap and the economics work out, you're front of line, right? Anyway, so I'm going to ask one more question, then we'll open it up for the audience. We're talking about all the nice, good things about AI, and that's obviously nice and dandy, but, there are certain things to be careful about, right? There's word of cautions. I wouldn't say anything else. It's just word of cautions for people to be aware about AI. Anyone has any word of cautions about things to be careful about? As you mentioned biases. I think, there's biases, there's safety concerns. There could be other things, which is things could go haywire. So red teaming, guardrails. I don't know if there are words of cautions that you want to share with people here playing games and building games for that matter.
I could probably take a crack at this. So at Salesforce, we are essentially looking at a few fundamentals to be put in place before we actually take this on. And we actually call it the trust layer, because right now when you actually send up data to, let's say, a chat GPT, there is information, there is data about you that can be accessed by, through models by different individuals, right? And that's not something that you would want in the long term. So be it biases, be it hallucinations, which means you're actually, the system can actually hallucinate and provide feedback. It could be in terms of security, in terms of your data. That is going to be very critical. So biases, hallucination, security of your data, I think these are going to be crucial over the next, several I'm actually going to use the word weeks because to your point, the amount of changes that happens week on week within the organization, it's hard for even me to keep up. And I think while the cost is one factor that's obviously coming down, and I think to Amit's point about large tech companies like Salesforce, Meta, Microsoft, we're investing billions of dollars, right? It's not small investments that's actually going into building, training these LLMs and so on. So I think like what Manohar is saying, a good combo of an open source plus probably a cloud provider is probably a way to start off with because it gives you all the fundamentals that is required for you. Because at no point you won't be pulled up by a regulator saying, hey, your data is it's being misused or you're having some of these biases that's led to XYZ case being filed against you. So you don't want any of those things to happen. So as long as the basics are in right, and I think a combination of what Manohar and Amit were talking about, I think would be fantastic.
I'll just take one shot on this, which is on AI alliances. We are an active partner in that. I think members from every community influencers ecosystem are coming together to define what is good and bad. And I think you should progressively participate in that and giving feedback because this community together will say what is good and bad as you start to explore. We know certain scenarios, but certain scenarios are still to be explored. So I think alliances and ecosystems that are forming participate in that. I think that's what I'll say at this stage to make it more responsible for everyone. Biases, all of that is covered right now, but I think as we go deeper, there'll be more areas that will uncover, and I think we participate in all forums to make sure that we are compliant.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to word of caution, I think in my mind what comes is like, I mean, for Dream 11 and for everyone else, I'm assuming, I think the user data, like privacy, I think is very important. And, to use a cliche, with great power comes great responsibility of sorts. So what ends up happening is like these things are so tempting that you can actually cross the line and say that I want to give such an amazing user experience that I want this data, I want that. So somewhere you have to be careful in like not crossing the line and making sure that you don't want to spook the end customer saying like, oh, you know too much about me. This is like, I don't know if there is a thing called as way too personalized for me of sorts. Like, how do you really know this about me? I think that's something that I would say like, let's not get greedy with it. I think that's one thing that I would say. And another thing is like, these technologies are new, so really understand how they work. So like sometimes when I talk to people and I say that, ChatGPT can give you incorrect information, they're shocked. They're like, what? It's like, it's not a truth teller, like for example. So like understanding that. And when you are interacting with these models, what data flows out, everything that you write into it, how the data is going. So that education for everyone in every org, so especially a lot of non-tech functions, do not completely understand. They just know what it's capable of, but behind the scenes, the magic, they don't understand it that well. So it's very easy to actually interact with these things and then put in sensitive information, which could probably end up in public domain. So I think everyone should probably spend some time now that it's going to be part of all our lives. Right. It's very important for everyone to educate all the teams within the organization, make them understand what's okay, what's not okay, how does it, what is the basics of how it works, so that they don't end up in this kind of situations. I think that's one thing that I would recommend.
Yeah.
And I think I'll add to that. There are two scenarios. Everything's not on the cloud. A lot of these LLMs can be behind a firewall. And logically, so please pick up your scenario and say which goes behind the firewall and which should be in public spaces, to Amit's point. These are very important pointers, and that is why sometimes it can be on a private cloud or in premise as well. Everything may or will not be on the cloud as we see going forward.
You're right. No, absolutely. And I think, to your initial point, I think representation from the gaming industry in the alliances, in these formations of guidelines and standards become very important. I'm part of some and I see, people from the tech space, but you don't see a lot of people from other industries, right? So I think, it's everyone's responsibility to partake and give their feedback. And absolutely, I think security threats are at its highest ever. So, security is becoming a very big challenge, and, being careful of and having the responsibility of owning data has become a very big part of it. So great points. I think we have 10 minutes left, so we can open it up for questions. I think, it's plenty of time we can, I think, take 2, 3. So, if there's a mic and I see someone right here, if you can start off, yeah. Is there a mic for...
Thank you, Swapan, for moderating the show. It's actually amazing to see this very good question that has come up. I am an AI/ML enthusiast, and I'm actually very good. I'm actually saying that yes, in a way, you're saying that we have some very open sources to learn more and more, and then develop and explore more and more AI generative solutions. But in the contrast of it, I would actually say it is actually picking us in a very different spot, difficult spot, I would actually say, because you need to engage more. You have to create a USP. So in that case, that is actually one question. I have another one, which is about the data security. How do you really recommend that, yes, data governance and data privacy should actually play a role as a regulator, and where a gaming developer should actually stop that, yes, this is the potential guardrail that we should not really cross?
So it's just to kind of...
two questions, yeah.
Yeah, but can you introduce what you do so that anyone who's answering can cater it to what you do?
I am Manish Bhalla. I am an IMA graduate, and I actually did a data science program from IIM Ahmedabad. I represent Centric Consulting, which is actually into Gen AI service industry and all those. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you want to know, as a game developer, what are some of the guardrails that should be put in and that should not be crossed? Is
Correct.
that right?
Correct. And second point is what can be the potential, next level? Because...
So what's the USP that someone can build?
Correct.
If someone wants to take it.
I can take the governance question.
Yeah.
I think whether it's last year or year before that, I think that doesn't actually change much, to be very honest, right? Like, right from like ingesting the data and creating it and storing it in a place where it's very secure, having all kind of firewalls and other mechanisms in place. We constantly do like external penetration testing on our systems to make sure that we're secure. We do internal audits so we are secure. That forms one layer. Second layer is about access. So you can have all kinds of data, but not everyone needs to have access to all the data that they need. So making sure that there are governance practices in-house available, that who gets access to aggregate data, who gets access to individual data. How do you make sure that the PII data of every user is actually stored and secure? That becomes a huge part of it. And you can put in all these practices in place, but I'm going back to again, like your audits are very important. Because a lot of times what we end up saying is like, oh, we have everything secure and we get very confident, but then every now and then your internal and external audits will actually uncover certain portions where certain flaws, certain loopholes that you may be there, or certain things that you've not thought of, for example, or things are not working the way you expect them to work. So I think all of that, as I said, user safety, privacy is paramount. So you have to make sure that you create the entire framework and be ethical. A lot of industry standards around there. A lot of people are talking about how they do it and just maintain those standards. So from data governance, I think that's key. Whether it's AI, whether it's other languages, whether it's traditional machine learning, the underlying principles stay the same there.
Firstly, thank you for your question. I think just to, while Amit's already covered, the question with, what's supposed, what you should be looking at. I think one of the points that I think we should all in this room understand is that there is a skill set gap that we currently have in the industry to actually look at, be it the industry from an AI standpoint. I think that's very, very critical, because if you don't have the right people driving the initiative, then you're essentially having people who are currently cross-trained, which is a great thing. I'm not saying it's not good, but you need to have the right set of skills to get some of these fundamentals in place. I think that's going to be a very, very critical thing. So to cover everything that Amit spoke about as a part of what a developer or the team should be looking at, I think the right skill set is going to be very, very important. So
yeah, and I think just to summarize all that, I think one of the things is separation of concerns becomes even more important, because as Amit was saying, right, it's very easy to get tempted to sometimes blur the line and cross the line. But if there is another team who's checking it and making sure that, there are the lines not being crossed, there are actually frameworks you can build, that every prompt going to an LLM will go through this framework, right? So we've done it at Haptik, where we have an anonymization framework. So all PI data gets scraped, no matter even if by mistake things go in. So separation of concerns, putting some of these frameworks that cannot be bypassed becomes significantly more important at that point. We'll open it up for more questions if anyone has. I think there is a gentleman back there who has his hand raised. Okay, first here, then there.
Hello to all the panelists and the host. Myself, Mayank. I am a game developer, particularly involved in real money gaming. So my question is, I want to extend on the question that our host already asked. I want to ask for the people who are primarily involved in the production, like game devs, animators, artists. There is a burning question we all see in professional platforms, like there are many times polls regarding it, posts regarding it. So there is basically we already talked about the good parts of the AI, and so I want to basically want to know your take if we critically analyze this. There is a debate on whether AI will take the job of like animators, and there is this burning question. So what's your take on this?
So just to repeat, the question is, will AI take the jobs of the people involved in the ecosystem, such as animators, game designers, and
Yes.
such? So anyone who has an answer or a
Yeah,
take on that?
I think the diplomatic answer out in the world is that use AI to augment your role. I think that's a diplomatic answer. But I honestly think that there will be roles that will get impacted. I mean, that's the honest truth. I think people like to sugarcoat that statement. But having said that, what's also going to be important is that you understand how to use AI and leverage it to a point where you're still relevant in the industry, right? Because my belief is, at least in the next, I don't know, few years that we have in line of sight to, I do not think that AI can completely replace everything that we do. But would it have a long-term impact? I absolutely think it would. I don't want to be diplomatic here. I honestly think there would be impacts. But it's about making sure that you know what's the path that you want to take to make sure that you don't get irrelevant in the market. So that's what I would look at.
I think you can look at it from two different lenses. One lens is, okay, so there are a set of people who are very good at animation today, and they probably might get impacted. So let's put a pin on that for now. But on the other hand, imagine, I think, the productivity boost then the entire industry gets, because a lot of people who didn't have the skill set of doing this today can very easily get into it, and we'll get more people into the workforce. So more people who are in the traditional non-knowledge worker kind of roles will get into this and start contributing a lot more. So net productivity and impact in the industry will increase. But coming back to the original skill set, you always have to keep evolving. I think figure out, instead of thinking of the threat, think of it okay, how do I go from 1x to 10x with these capabilities? If today you are specialized in animations, because of this, you can start doing horizontal. You get into other verticals and figure out, and you can start doing a lot more. So you have to expand your skill set. So everyone has to just elevate what they're doing today and go to the next level. And that next level will be different for different individuals. So I would say that it's very easy to, understand the threat that people perceive, but I think the more you shift your mindset to see it more as an opportunity than a threat, the better it will be for you.
Yeah, and my great analogy on this that I tell every time is when the ATM machine came, it's not like the bank tellers went out of job. I think what ended up happening is the experience and the world experiences became like a bank experience became significantly better. Now it's so much easier to go to a bank, get money out, but a little bit more complex, you go to tellers, right? So I think that's the world that's just going to evolve to. But anyways, because we're going to be short on time, we have 1 minute left, and I think there was a gentleman back there who had a question. So that's going to be the last question we'll take, please. Can we give him the mic?
Thank you. My name is Tushar. I represent OneCard, and I believe I'm sort of an outlier here because I don't really come from the gaming industry. Now, what I want to understand from all the folks there, that behind every tech innovation in the recent past, fintech has played its role, be it travel, be it e-commerce. But in the gaming industry, especially when I talk of cards as a product, because of the regulations around and everything happening around it, cards don't really seem to have played the kind of role that they would have played. And if I go by the PwC report, there would probably be about 200 cards by the year 28-29, 200 million cards. So, as an industry, what role do you think that fintechs can play, and especially when it comes to payments? Thank you.
Anyone who wants to take that? Maybe Kshitij, are you?
I'm not clear, I get your question, but it's like you just want to understand what the potential of cards is, or what?
So, let's say in a travel industry, there are so many offers that continue to go with credit cards. In e-commerce, there are, again, so many partnerships, co-brands, so much happen on credit cards. But in gaming, there is nothing of that kind happening at this point in time. So, do you think it's maybe shaping up a little too early right now? Or do you see it happening at this point in time?
I think there are opportunities. I think one of the thesis as a fund we believe in is like building for vertical sets of consumers. So as you said, travel as a vertical, like we've invested in a company called Scapia, which does that, like a card for travelers almost, right? So it's a value proposition that you position it as. And I have met founders who are building for a community of gamers as well. And a lot of, I think, podcasts and a lot of people also talk about this as like this audience of gamers being a vertical to solve for, because our thesis of vertical fintechs is also almost to say that there is always a sizable, like whenever there's a sizable population of a vertical audience that is growing, like say travelers, there are probably more than 20-30 million travelers who are high value travelers in India. There are around 30 million NRIs, for example. We invested in another company called in NRI banking as well. So similarly, there's a sizable population of gamers who are growing. They have similar pain points. So it's more about, so there can easily be a player who comes in, stitches a value proposition for that community, because there's a market that exists. And if you create that well enough and solve a homogeneous pain point, starting with a high frequency use case, which typically comes in the form of payments or SaaS, which might not monetize much, but has high frequency of usage, and then you cross-sell into other products. So instead of a product-first approach for a horizontal set of users, you can think of it as a segment-first approach, in this case being the gaming community or a gamer community. Start with a high-frequency product and go into other products for the same community, right? So that's how I would think of it. I think the opportunity is there for the taking. We've invested in multiple of these verticals, as I said, like travel or NRI or something like that. This is another vertical we are open to investing in as well. But yeah, it's something, if you want to build, you should go for it.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, everyone. I think it was a wonderful panel, very great conversations. And, I think that's about it. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being a great audience.
Thank you.